We are tracking a big winter storm that will bring more snow, more ice, and another round of significant severe weather to the United States, followed by the polar vortex that will arrive next week, which will bring the coldest air of the winter season to some folks, especially into the northern U.S., and that could be followed by another big winter storm in the eastern U.S. next week. So if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe to the channel, follow along with all my detailed, accurate weather breakdowns. We're going to go step by step through the forecast so you can understand what type of weather you can expect in your weather forecast moving forward. Like the video, especially if you do enjoy it and find it informative, and also share this video with friends, family, and on social media. I definitely appreciate it. Getting into the forecast, let's look at this big ridge of high pressure here, and this is actually a big Arctic high here into the middle of the country, and this is actually giving us some very cold air. Look at here into the northern United States, the Dakotas, into Minnesota here, much of Nebraska, Iowa, into Kansas even, and up here into Wisconsin. Those are sub-zero morning lows that we had this morning, even some air temperatures starting off at 30 degrees below zero, and our wind chills this morning were down around 40 below, especially up into North Dakota and northwestern Minnesota. Now, as we go into the afternoon here, notice our temperatures will warm up pretty quickly here, but we're still going to be pretty cold. Across the upper Midwest, we're going to see temperatures into the single digits. At least they'll be above zero, but our wind chill values will still be 5 to 15 degrees below zero from North Dakota into parts of eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, northeast Wisconsin, and parts of northern Illinois. So make sure to bundle up even this afternoon if you head out the door there across the northern United States. Talking about the western U.S., also a pretty cold start, especially in the higher elevations, something you're probably not accustomed to seeing this time of year. Again, we are seeing some pretty cold air even further south, but notice the wind chill values pushing into the 30 degrees below zero range. So another very cold day to start there in the west. And notice this afternoon, our temperatures will be around 70 degrees in Phoenix, Arizona. So pretty warm down there to the south. That's kind of what you can expect in the desert. Now, looking here at the east, not too bad this morning. Coldest air up there into Maine, where we started off near zero or in the single digits above zero. Wind chills up there this morning started below zero by a handful of degrees. However, this afternoon, we're going to warm temperatures up pretty nicely. Actually, our morning lows into Georgia, parts of the Carolinas, we're actually in the 70s this morning. We'll fall off a few degrees as we go into the afternoon as a strong cold front comes through. That's the same cold front that brought severe weather and tornadoes to the deep south yesterday. So our afternoon temperatures will be more in the 50s and 60s. But hey, if you want a warm spot to go to Orlando, Tampa Bay, Miami, or even Daytona Beach, because it's going to be well into the 80s and maybe, just maybe, even a 90-degree temperature there in south central Florida this afternoon. Now, cold air will continue to funnel in on the backside of our big winter storm as we come through the weekend, as it comes down from portions of the Canadian prairies into the plains, and then we have warmer air out ahead of the system. That's warm, moist, unstable air. That's getting our atmosphere ripe for severe weather. So looking here at the snow depth, this is what is on the ground currently here this Thursday. Notice the heaviest snow on the ground is in the Pacific Northwest, the upper Great Lakes region, or interior Northeast, and southern Canada is stealing the show right now with the snow on the ground. But we did actually add some snow here across the Chicagoland area back into Des Moines, Lincoln, Nebraska, Kansas City with our most recent winter storm. Yes, it did underperform, but definitely laid down some decent snows at times. We did have a 10-inch report even in northwest Illinois, northeastern Iowa. Now here is the rainfall anomalies, the precipitation anomalies over the past 7 days. Notice we are about 3 to 5 inches ahead of schedule there in east central Kentucky and into southern West Virginia, parts of western Virginia, and anywhere in the green we're about an inch or two ahead of schedule. So much of the Tennessee Valley, the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and down toward the southern plains, we are actually well ahead of pace for moisture at this point. Here comes our next big winter storm here across the west. Today, already as we speak, we're seeing very heavy snow in the Sierras there in California, very heavy rain across coastal California and the foothills here from north to south, even including the Los Angeles area down there into San Bernardino, Fresno, and San Diego. And that's going to continue as we go into tonight. You can see more of that heavy rainfall even moving into Los Angeles metro area over there towards San Diego. Heavy snows continuing to move further inland and towards Salt Lake City, up there into places like Idaho, Wyoming, and western Colorado. Then as we go into Friday, we're going to see that moisture lessen and push to the east, and we're going to shut off the taps as we go into the weekend as that winter storm moves further inland and away from the west coast. Now, before it's all said and done, we're going to be seeing several inches of rain here. We're talking Northern California, Central California, and Southern California getting in on the moisture here this time. We could be seeing rainfall amounts anywhere from 2 to as much as 6 inches, especially along coastal California and those valleys of the foothills, and runoffs could actually lead to some mudslides, so do be aware of that. Now, looking here at the snowfall in the higher elevations, such as the Sierra Mountains, we're talking 2 to as much as 4 feet here, and some avalanche potential here as well. So make sure that if you are going skiing or snowboarding out here, make sure you are aware of the avalanche potential as we go through this upcoming weekend. Then our system will evolve downstream toward the Rockies as we go into Friday. You can see a low pressure developing here. That's the start of our next storm system. It's going to dive southeast. It's going to gobble up some Gulf moisture and then move north and east, and it's going to strengthen as it does so. As we go into Sunday, it's strengthening over West Virginia, and then by the time we get into Sunday afternoon up toward Philly, that's where that low pressure system will be, and it's going to drag a fairly strong cold front with it yet again, and this could spark more dangerous severe weather. The Storm Prediction Center has an outlook day 3 now for severe weather. If you're in the dark green, the yellow, or the orange, the dark green is a level 1 out of 5 marginal risk that extends all the way up into Kentucky, as far west as East Texas, or as far east as Western Carolinas. In the yellow, we have a slight risk that's a level 2 out of 5. And then in the orange, kind of the bullseye right now, that's a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk, covering much of north central and northeast Louisiana, southeast Arkansas, much of Mississippi, and into west central Alabama. And that's kind of a bullseye really from Monroe over to Jackson and the Birmingham, Tuscaloosa area. So if you know anybody down there, make sure to make them aware that some dangerous severe weather will be possible on Saturday and into Saturday night this weekend with all modes of severe weather, damaging winds, tornadoes, and hail. Let's look at the setup here. So in the green, that's where the more moisture is. In the brown, that's where we're drier. And notice as we go into Saturday afternoon, we're going to pick up that moisture as that system picks that moisture up and lifts further northeast. It's going to pull that moisture along and ahead of the cold front. And anywhere in the green here, dew points are in the 50s and even well into the 60s. And that's going to make it very moist out there and unstable. Here's our storm energy, okay? So in the lighter blues, in the greens, and especially the yellows, that's where we see 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE, convective available potential energy. Basically, the higher the value, the higher the chance for thunderstorms and the better the chance for severe weather. So that is definitely a possibility there. Then we look at the low-level jet in the 850 millibar layer. This is your low-level shear needed for tornado genesis. Notice it gets a lot stronger through the day on Saturday because the storm system is strengthening. But naturally, as we get toward the late afternoon and evening, the low-level jet becomes maximized, and that could be over 70, 80 knots down here. So this is pretty strong low-level shear, and that's why I think strong tornadoes will be in play even after dark. So this is a dangerous setup. So here we go on Saturday morning, isolated coverage of storms, Memphis down toward Little Rock and in towards northern portions of Louisiana, say the Shreveport area. Then as we go into the midday hours, notice how we get a line of storms, and they're not moving west to east. They're moving more southwest to northeast here from East Texas all the way up into Middle Tennessee. This could create flash flooding potential as we have several rounds of very heavy rain over the same area repeatedly, and then it'll start to become more progressive as the cold front finally starts to sweep east, and this is when severe weather will be maximized late Saturday afternoon through late Saturday evening, and that's where we could have all modes of severe weather, nocturnal tornadoes, widespread 60, 70 plus mile per hour damaging winds, and some quarter size hail or larger. And we have to watch the storms out ahead of the main squall line because those could pose the best risk for a strong tornado. And we're not talking an EF0 or EF1. We're talking an EF2 tornado or stronger variety as this pushes to the east, and we'll continue to see that late Saturday evening before falling apart as it moves more into eastern Alabama, into Georgia, and northwest Florida Sunday morning as we lose all the energy and the daytime heating. Here's the storm system at a wider scope. We're going to see that move across the Rockies with some heavier snowfall. As we go into Saturday, it's going to have a snow component, very similar areas to the snow that we got done seeing just yesterday. So back into Omaha, Des Moines, Chicago, Milwaukee, Rockford, Illinois, back there toward Grand Rapids, Lansing, up there to Traverse City and Detroit. We have a icy mix there for places like Fort Wayne over towards Toledo, and then heavier rain in the green and severe weather further to the south. Notice we could have some backwash moisture here into the Ohio Valley. That could be snowfall, so we could get some more snow in Ohio, eastern Kentucky, and West Virginia. Icy mix over here into Concord, down to Boston, and just north of New York City there toward Albany. That is something to watch for some, localized significant icing concerns, and then maybe some snow on the backside as the colder air wraps around on the backside there for places, again, that are seeing the ice. Albany, Boston, Concord, those areas as we go into the day on Monday. Now, as far as snowfall is concerned, it's not going to be very heavy for the Midwest. Anywhere from Minnesota to Iowa, northern Missouri, we're seeing more of a 1 to 3 inch snow. Northern Illinois looking at more of a 2 to 4 inch snow, isolated 5 inch amounts. Up here into Wisconsin, where you see the pinks and purples, over to Michigan, we're looking at 6 to 10 inches, and then especially interior New England and southern portions of Ontario, in southern Quebec, that's where we could see more of 1 to 2 feet of snow. Yes, with this system, definitely seeing the potential for blizzard conditions. And then in the transition zone, we're looking at the potential for significant icing. That could create hazardous travel out there with slick roadways and power outages potentially as the ice accretes on the power lines. We could be seeing localized over a 1/4 inch of ice here. This does include the Boston area back into Albany, into Hartford, and maybe the Concord, New Hampshire area, and then cold air damming down the Appalachians from Pennsylvania into Maryland, West Virginia, and Northwest Virginia. That's where we have the potential for more of a couple of tenths of an inch of ice. On the warm side, earlier in the video, remember how I said in east central Kentucky, southern West Virginia, we are about 3 to 5 inches ahead of pace for moisture. Well, we're going to get another 3 to 5 inches of rainfall on top of that. So saturated soils as we go through the weekend. And notice here as we look at this stratosphere, okay, this is the layer of the atmosphere above where we live. We live in the troposphere. We have the stratospheric polar vortex kind of splitting here. It's not a classic split, but the main lobe of the polar vortex is over Hudson Bay and Quebec and in our backyard essentially. And we have a cross polar flow, northwest flow here from Canada down into the United States. And that's going to bring some really cold air to the picture as we go into next week. You see these pinks and purples, how widespread they are. And these are temperature anomalies in the ag belt that are around 30, 40, even 50 degrees below normal, where we should see them this time of year. So you know it's cold. And then down here near the Gulf Coast where you see the blues and greens, that's still temperature anomalies 5 to as much as 15 degrees below normal as we go through that 5-day period between Monday, February 17th and Friday, February 21st. And just for example, let's look at the upper Midwest and the northern plains. So like the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, northern Illinois, and northern Indiana. These areas are going to wake up Monday morning. If you're heading out to work or if you do have school because it's really cold, we're going to see temperatures 15 to as much as 30 degrees below zero. This is just your air temperature. You factor in the wind, and our wind chills could be pushing 50 degrees below zero at times, especially up here in North Dakota, but all across the upper Midwest in the northern tier of the United States with those sub-zero wind chills, possibly as far south as northern Kansas, Missouri, downstate Illinois, and central southern Indiana, and over to northwest Ohio. So very cold. I could definitely see some school cancellations out there or some 2-hour delays as we go into the next week timeframe, especially for that Monday morning. Looking here at the storm track as we go into next week, cold air is dry air. It's going to push the storm track further south. Very wet along the Gulf Coast. I think a lot of this is going to be rainfall, but definitely seeing the potential for a vigorous storm system that is going to move into the southern, but eventually the eastern U.S. later next week. And let's walk you through that. So looking here at Monday, February 17th, we already have a new low pressure developing back into Colorado again, snow to the north, and this could be pretty fluffy snow with how cold it is. As we go into Tuesday, snowfall line could be all the way south into Oklahoma, Kansas, into the panhandle of Texas, icy mix around the Wichita Falls area, south of Oklahoma City toward Lawton, and over there into eastern Oklahoma on Tuesday. And then we see that move even further south, an icy mix perhaps for San Antonio, the DFW area, over here to Tyler, Texas, Shreveport perhaps, with the snow potentially wrapping in on the backside for the areas of the DFW area into Little Rock. And then a big nor'easter is possible according to the European model for the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, but especially the Northeast, and this could include the I-95 corridor depending on the positioning of this low. If it's closer to the coast, probably more rain and some warmer air, or at least an icy mix. If it's further away from the coast, we're looking at more heavy snow here for the Northeast, something to keep an eye on. But this goes all the way through the weekend, and it wraps up pretty good. Those ISO bars get very tight, and those ISO bars, when they get tight, that means strong winds will be a concern, so blizzard-like conditions will be possible. Now, this is the European model, spitting out potentially 1 to as much as 2 feet of snow here from northwestern Tennessee all the way through the I-95 corridor up into the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. This is just one model run, and it will change a few times before we get to later next week. Other models aren't showing as much snow or as much of the dynamic here, and other models are also not showing as much snow down into Texas either. So there's still a little bit of disagreement here on the models, but something we're going to watch. And more heavy rain down here in the Gulf Coast and into the Southeast here, just kind of saturate those soils as we go in towards later next week. That is for sure. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, follow along with all my detailed, accurate weather breakdowns, turn on post notifications so you're notified for future videos and live streams on the channel. Like the video, especially if you did enjoy it and you find it informative. Share this video with friends, family, and on social media. Leave a comment down below in the comment section if you have any comments about the weather, a question about the winter storms or the cold air that we're seeing. I'll definitely answer those here after the video, and I hope everyone has a wonderful and safe rest of their Thursday out there.